To say I love the games Insomniac creates would be an understatement. Hell, one of my most well-received videos was on their Spider-Man game, and I most certainly have a script ready for the follow-up. But Insomniac and I go way back to the days of Spyro. Despite Spider-Man being one of my favorite games, and Spyro being my first exposure to them, I will always associate them with their very own dynamic duo of superheroes, Ratchet and Clank. The craziest part is I accidentally got into the series. Fun story, when I was a kid, my house almost burnt down. Yet all the damage it did was there was this weird reek in the house. We got it sorted, and then my mom was listening to a radio show where they were complaining about smells. She called in, told them what she did, and as thanks they gave her 2 PS2 games. The funniest part of this story is when they offered to give her Need for Speed Underground 2 and FIFA for whatever fucking year it was. She told them not to bother with FIFA because I don't like soccer or football or whatever you call it, and I got Ratchet 3 instead. So yeah, I guess my mom is partially to blame for these insane rants about space cats. Thanks, Mom! Since the PS2, Ratchet has been a mainstay for PlayStation consoles, but fan perception of the series has dwindled a little bit in recent years. I mean, the PS3 saw the spacefaring duo delve into so-so spin-offs, and a lot of people have soured on the future trilogy. The PS4 entry was a kinda reboot, reimagining movie tie-in game that most fans gave a meh out of 10, so it's no surprise to think that perhaps the series would have been put to rest for Insomniac. I mean, Ratchet's other contemporaries like Sly Cooper and Jak and Daxter had already retired, and it's not like Insomniac doesn't have other games they could fall back on. Resistance, Sunset Overdrive, and the aforementioned Spider-Man have all done really well in their own right, so you could forgive them for moving on. Yet in 2019, Sony straight up bought Insomniac, and with the upcoming release of the PS5, you could imagine that Sony was pushing for the brand synergy that Ratchet offers. And so on June 11th, 2020, we got this.
Ratchet, we are too late. Ratchet?
Who?
Now, for the illusion of fairness, I need to say Rift Apart is not a perfect game. It recycles bosses like it's trying to save the planet. Some people might think the game is just a wee bit too short for the asking price, and the fact that some costumes are exclusive to a $15 upgrade isn't great. Yeah, I know I bought them, but I'm part of the problem. Rift Apart was a huge deal not just for Insomniac, but the PS5 in general. The game had to contend with the negative perception of the PS3 games, become the poster child for Sony's new console, and it had to somehow compete with the expectations set by games like Spider-Man. And you know what? It totally did, because it embraced all these potential hurdles to its success and based the entire narrative core of the game on it. You see, at its heart, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart is a game about imposter syndrome. You may have heard that term from other content creators on this platform, but put simply, it's an internal experience of believing that you are not as competent as others perceive you to be. And that sentiment permeates the whole game. I mean, look at the first line spoken by Ratchet.
Everyone thinks we're washed up. Oh, what if we are washed up?
This isn't just a throwaway line. Rather, it's being used to set up the major narrative beats for the game and to voice the developers' fears of having to make another game in the Ratchet series. Now, obviously, I'm going to be talking a good bit about the story, so spoiler warning, but maybe skip ahead to the gameplay section to see how Insomniac shook things up there if you want to feel like you haven't wasted your time. Now, without further delay, let's talk about how all the characters are crippled with self-doubt and anxiety. Can you believe this game is for 7 and up? Let's get into it first with the lovable Lombax himself, Ratchet. Now, while you'd think the washed up line would be Ratchet's fear throughout the game, it's actually not. Hell, as soon as Dr. Nefarious starts destroying the city, he and Clank pretty quickly spring into action. Now, Ratchet's actual crisis begins when Clank offers his friend a chance to find Ratchet's universally displaced people. For those not in the know, Ratchet's people were technological geniuses, whereas Ratchet...
What about your nuclear-powered rocket sled? Your antimatter bathroom buddy? And let us not forget about the electroshock undergarments you invented last fall.
Stunderwear.
Well, he's a little less so. Plus, the last time Ratchet met a Lombax, it didn't exactly go too well for him. He's naturally afraid of finding his family for fear of being nothing but a disappointment, and for not continuing the Lombax's technological advancements and culture. Clank, on the other hand, could be seen as the reason the dimensions are falling apart. He and Ratchet being separated, and bringing another Dr. Nefarious to a universe that desperately needs one less than it already had. Couple that with the fact this whole incident has left Clank completely unable to move without aid, and it makes sense why he may be feeling a little useless and taking all the blame. But it's not just the title's titular hero heroes who are carrying some deep-seated fears. Series newcomer Rivet is also not in the best state of mind. Recent events have left her without friends, allies, and an arm, and because of this she's quick to dismiss Clank and help in general. And while she may be in a resistance against her Nefarious, it wouldn't be a reach to say she thinks she's only capable of fighting the fires he creates, rather than being able to completely dethrone the Emperor. You could also read her dismissal of Clank as perhaps a way to protect herself from getting hurt by losing someone else, but then again that is just conjecture. Kit, who's Clank's interdimensional counterpart, was born a war machine, but after injuring a freedom fighter she was horrified by her actions and decided to cut herself off from people, in an attempt to protect them from her. She's extremely timid and her isolation has also left her social skills with a lot to be desired. Finally, there's Glitch, a sentient hacking program that got patched with a crippling lack of confidence when it comes to hacking, which is weird when you realise that's the whole reason she exists. This may sound like heavy stuff for a game with characters that look like this, but Ratchet has never really talked down to its audience. I mean, the first 4 games were super anti-corporate and a pastiche of consumer culture, which is even today a rarity for modern AAA games. Certainly blew little Kevin's mind. Rift Apart feels like a return to form for the series' commitment to not dumb down its core message. For example, the characters' insecurities are all reinforced by the events of the game. Every time they try to do something, it kind of blows up in their faces.
I believe hitting it will either shift us to another dimension or cause us to implode. Ah.
Holy shit, you fucking killed her, dude!
Clank builds a Dimensionator, Nefarious almost destroys the multiverse with it. The gang tries to rebuild the Dimensionator, major parts are either completely destroyed or in really hard to access locations. Even when they finally build the damn thing and it seems like everything is back on track, Emperor Nefarious just rolls up and fucking takes it. Like, so much of this story is about grinding the characters into the ground. So how do our characters, and to extent Insomniac, deal with this overbearing sense of dread? By relying on others and remembering what you can do instead of what you can't. For example, one of Clank and Rivet's earliest goals is getting Phase Quartz to power the Dimensionator, and it's destroyed almost immediately after they get it. And this is after they've gone through a gauntlet of challenges and 2 universes just to get at it. While Clank is immediately deflated, Rivet offers a solution to their new predicament. Conversely, when Rivet feels bad about not trusting Clank and hacking his brain, she's slow to apologize, but Clank's already past it. Kit is afraid she may eventually hurt someone at some point, but Ratchet's initial proposal is to team up for one mission as a trial run with no hard commitments. Once Kit sees how understanding Ratchet is, she's able to consider leaving her self-imposed exile and help in the fight against Nefarious. And Kit pays this back just as well, reassuring Ratchet that his insecurities of not meeting the Lombax's ideals of him are completely unfounded. He may not be as technically savvy as them, but his kind personality and his drive to help others make him an individual worth their illustrious status. I also think it's telling that Glitch's confidence issues may be caused by her inability to vocalize them to the other playable characters. But as we play as her more and more and Ratchet begins to rely on her as an ally, we see she becomes more self-assured in her abilities. Hell, she even has a story arc of her own that reflects the themes and narrative beats of the main story. It also helps that Insomniac finally figured out how to make a hacking section fun, rather than whatever this is. I also find it really interesting that Clank and Kit sections, where they correct dimensional anomalies, act almost like therapy sessions for them, with some sound advice of taking things one step at a time, doing what's in front of you, and remembering what you can do rather than what you can't. And we see Clank and Kit's confidence really grow in these sections. This reliance on others makes total sense for the series. Ratchet and Clank have both been seen as underdogs in their own way, with Ratchet being seen as the last of a forgotten race, and Clank being a failed warbot. But it's because of their friendship and their teamwork that they've saved the day as many times as they have. You could read it that the reason Rivet's universe is as dire as it is because she never met her partner, Kit. The start of the game also feels super distressing when Ratchet and Clank are separated. You get a really good sense of their concern for one another, and as soon as they're able to talk, the stress is immediately lifted. And this even leads to one of the funniest and most reassuring moments in the game. It comes right after Ratchet and Clank have finally reunited and set out on their first adventure in this new universe together.
Like always.
Yeah, that's the Turtles' seminal hit Happy Together playing, as Ratchet and Clank reassure one another, and no, I didn't edit that in. It's in the game. I mean, this theme of relying on others makes so much sense. Despite what dropping names like Miyamoto, Druckerman, or even Kojima may lead you to believe, games are an extremely collaborative process. You need to be able to get people to work together to even get a game out, let alone a good one. Reliance on others can even be traced back to Ratchet & Clank's roots, when Naughty Dog lent Insomniac their game engine so they could get the game off the ground. Even this game's super weapon, the Rhino Omega, gets help from Sony properties, which brings me to the gameplay. I noted that in my video on Control there seems to be a major shift in gun-based combat systems. I think this can be attributed to the likes of Vanquish and Doom. Shameless plug. A lot of gun-based combat systems that stand out nowadays are those that emphasize movement and combos. Rift Apart is very much the same in this way, but it only overhauls what it needs to. You see, in the PS4 entry, areas could be a little too large for their own good, giving you ample time to deal with threats at your leisure. In Rift Apart, enemies are much more aggressive to compensate for the larger areas you fight in. Because of this, Ratchet and Rivet's movement capabilities have been augmented by the likes of the Phantom Dash and the Dimensional Tether. The Phantom Dash not only lets you quickly move away from an enemy attack, but also gives you invincibility frames for the duration. The Rift Tether allows you to quickly move to a different part of the arena, and they're usually placed in areas to allow you to catch your breath or set up a sneak attack on enemies in elevated points. Unlike in previous games where it seemed gunplay emphasized you grinding one weapon at a time, Rift Apart, especially on the higher difficulties, really wants you to use weapons in tandem. You could even break the weapons of Rift Apart into 3 categories: DPS, assistance, and paralyzers. Take for instance comboing Mr. Fungi with the Topiary Sprinkler and the Ion Blaster. The Sprinkler halts their movements while you unload the blaster into an enemy, and Mr. Fungi attacks for added damage. Or you could use the Ice Snap to freeze enemies in place with the Agents of Doom to pick off weaker enemies to allow you to fully empty both barrels of the Enforcer. This again reflects the game's core design message of collaboration. I may be reading too much into this, but after I did my video on Spider-Man and people started to say it was the best thing I made, I got a little afraid to make stuff for this channel. Like, what if the next thing I made wasn't as good? What if it was just a fluke? But then this game came along, and when I say I was grinning ear to ear playing the game, I need you to know that's not hyperbole. Ratchet & Clank have always been my gaming comfort food, and here they are reassuring me of what I'm doing, because even this YouTube channel is a collaborative process. Sure, I make the videos, but other people are creating these games I adore, and you guys that watch them are letting me know to keep making them, and I think that's really cool. And the game can even show you the dangers of not relying on others in the main villains of Nefarious, despite the fact that there are 2 of them and they kinda do team up. Ultimately, Emperor Nefarious is defeated because he can't truly rely on others. Rivet, Kit, Clank, Ratchet, they all become much more well-rounded people by relying on one another, by voicing their concerns and being reassured by their partners that everything's gonna be okay, that they can do this. Even Glitch, whose only other interaction is with her own villain, gains a sense of confidence knowing that other people are relying on her, that other people believe that she can do this. But what do you guys think? Am I just projecting too much onto a game about space cats and their robot buddies? Or did Rift Apart resonate with you as much as it did me? Let me know in the comments below. Sub and ring the bell if you like what you see. Like or dislike depending on what the voices in your head are saying. And I genuinely hope wherever you are, whatever you're going through, that you just have a good day. No forced end joke. Just thanks for watching, guys. Stay sexy.